Hey everyone, to get the pesto started, I am smashing about 4 little cloves of garlic underneath my cleaver. I like to use the cleaver because it's wide. I can get a good smash on it. So right now I'm just taking the skins off. Nothing fancy, just peeling the skin off of the garlic so I can then put the garlic in the food processor. I'm not going to chop it up because I don't need to, simply because I'm putting it in the food processor. So it's in the food processor, and I'm going to add the arugula that was left over from my arugula smoothie that I had earlier in the day. I'm just trying to use up the arugula, and then the rest will be used in a different recipe. So that's some spinach that I have. So that's about 1 bunch of spinach that I've put in there. And I'm just packing it down into the food processor. And then I put a little bit more just to top off the food processor. I'm also adding about 3 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds. Since I don't have pine nuts, they irritate my stomach, so I'm using pumpkin seeds. And then I have some mozzarella cheese. I didn't have any Parmesan, so I'm just using 3 to 4 tablespoons. I put 3 tablespoons in at first. Then there was just such a small amount left in the bag, so I just decided to just pour it in the bag. It wasn't that much left. So that's the 3rd tablespoon. Then you'll see I just put the rest in the bag. It wasn't even a full tablespoon. Now I'm blending all of that up in the food processor. And we're just going to let that whirl until everything gets nice and minced and chopped up. And then afterwards, I'll add the oil. So the food processor is just going, and I'm just shaking it up just to kind of distribute it into the food processor. Now I'm going to take the lid off and scrape down the sides so I can blend it up a little bit better. So now I'm just scraping the sides down, making sure that I get all of that goodness and, let it get a nice fine mince. And so I'm scraping it down off of the sides, and I will be blending it up again. I'm just trying to be careful because the blades are in there, and I don't want the blades to cut my wooden spoon or the spoon to damage the blades. So now I'm going to put the top right back on and then blend it up some more. So now I have the oil. That's some sunflower oil. I didn't have any olive oil. Olive oil is better. You don't really want to use a lot. That's a very fine stream that I'm pouring into the food processor. And I'm just trying to make sure that everything gets nice and incorporated and get it a little wet. Now, some pestos I have seen, they're very soupy, but I made mine thick. So now I'm checking it, and I will stir it up again just to get it all off the sides. Just go around the sides nicely to get the pesto nice and distributed. So I'm going to taste it. It tastes pretty good, but it doesn't have any salt or anything in it. Now, traditional pesto uses Parmesan cheese, which is very salty. So right now I'm putting some extra fine pink salt in there. Not that much. And I'm also going to cut a lemon in half, remove the seeds, because you don't want to get the seeds in there. But actually I did with the other half that I squeezed into the pesto. So now I'm just squeezing that, distributing it. If you have a manual juicer, you can juice the lemon that way. But I chose just to squeeze it. It was pretty juicy. So now I'm letting it all mix up, and you can see it's all going around nicely. And I'm just squeezing some more of the lemon into the pesto. That was the same lemon half. Still had a little bit of juice in there, so I just wanted to top it off. So now I'm just mixing everything up, and I tasted it with my finger, adding a little bit more salt. It wasn't salty enough for me. And so now I am giving it its final whirl. Oh, and I guess I did use another. Oh no, that's the same lemon. That's the same lemon. I'm just squeezing more of the juice. I didn't want it to be too lemony, so I'm just using that same half. That was a pretty big lemon. So I guess if you have a smaller lemon, you can actually use the entire lemon. Now, can you see how the color of the pesto has changed? And the consistency has changed a little just from adding just a little bit more lemon juice. And so now I'm going to take that off, and I'm tasting it, and it's actually perfect. So now I'm putting it into a bowl. And if you have a rubber spatula, then use that to make sure that you get all of the pesto out of the food processor. And I'm scraping it in a bowl, and this will last for about 3 to 4 days in your refrigerator. And you can put this on pasta instead of tomato sauce, or you can mix it with your tomato sauce if you want to. This is also good on smothered potatoes and pizza. So that's what I'm making it for right now, is to add to a little personal cheese pizza that I wanted. So I made 2 additional pizzas. Those have pepperoni on them. I made those for my family. You know, they're not about that vegan life. They're like, yeah, we want some pepperoni. So I just used turkey pepperoni. And so now the pesto is basically done, and we're going to make the pizza. So I had some leftover tortillas. You can use pizza crust, which would probably, of course, be thicker, and it'll give you a different texture, mouthfeel. This is just what I had on hand. I wanted to use it up after I had some butternut squash tacos that I made. So now I'm just spreading about a tablespoon of pesto onto the tortilla. Just spread it out in a nice circle. Just adding a little bit more, maybe about a tablespoon and a half. You don't really need that much because it's super concentrated and very flavorful. And it's also a good way to get your kids to eat some additional greens on their pizza. So that's my pizza. It's just going to be a plain cheese pizza that I'm making with the vegan cheese. But my family, they will be having, pepperoni pizza. So I got to figure out how to make vegan pepperonis. I'll be researching that. So what I did was I made some tomato sauce. I had a can of tomatoes, so I had a can of, stewed tomatoes that had Italian seasoning and garlic in it. So I made some tomato sauce with that. I added a little bit more Italian seasoning, and I just smashed down the tomatoes in the pan with potato masher. And so that's the sauce. So I'm just going to put a little bit on each one. You don't really need that much because these are very small. And now I'm just going to swirl the tomato sauce around with the bottom of the ladle. Now, if I would have let this cook a little longer, it would have cooked down and it would have been a lot thicker. For the tomato sauce, I just added again the Italian seasoning and a little bit of agave to it, and just a little bit of salt and pepper. So now I'm just putting a little bit more sauce on there. And I probably could have put the tomato sauce on mine, but I wanted to really taste the pesto. And so now I'm just spreading out the tomato sauce. And I will be adding the pepperonis to these after I put the cheese on top. I want to put the cheese on top first because the pepperonis were frozen. I found those in the freezer. So I put those on top because I wanted to make sure they cooked. Now, if they would have been thawed, then I would have put the pepperonis beneath the cheese. This is my first time using this cheese, so I didn't know how it would react in the oven with the heat and the frozen pepperoni. So that's why I put the pepperonis on top. So now I'm just adding the cheese to the pizzas. And now I will start to add the pepperonis. So since these are small, I'm just giving them a treat with a lot of pepperoni. These are turkey pepperoni. And so, just piling those on. And I'll do the same with the other pizza. And then let those cook in a 375, 400 degree oven for about 15 minutes. You want to, just make sure that the pepperonis are nice and sizzling when you take them out of the oven. So I'm really just piling those on, just trying to get rid of them. And now into the oven we go, and now they're out. So you see the cheese doesn't have that burn on it or anything like that, but it's nice and melted, it's nice and hot. And so I decided to put the other pizzas back in the oven just to see if the cheese could get just a little bit more melted. But that's it. That's a quick little snack.